Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hi there. Welcome to the 84th episode of A Couple Takes on MS. Hi, this is Dan Digman.
And hi, this is me, Jennifer Digman.
Welcome to our program, and tonight we, as A Couple Takes on MS, are going to talk about inflammation, stress, and MS. And I think that this is just something that we talk about with just the impact and how things can have such an impact on our lives and our well-being just as stress.
Yes, and just as a reminder, both Dan and I are living with multiple sclerosis. His is relapsing remitting and mine has progressed to secondary progressive. And we're doing this radio show to show two different takes on the disease, thus the name A Couple Takes on MS.
And I've had MS for over 20 years, and you are pushing to be almost over 22 years.
Yes, 22.
And with your progressive MS and my relapsing remitting MS, just how it affects, a woman, a man with multiple sclerosis, just what that does to our lives. And I think that this topic, as we talk about it with you all there in listener land, just like what effects stress has on our condition, on our well-being, and is it exaggerated because of this disease we call multiple sclerosis?
Well, I think let's be fair to those of you out there in listener land. What sparked this show today is I read a recent article from Healthline.com, and the article was called How Social Rejection Causes Stress and Inflammation. And it's very intriguing just how social rejection can increase stress, and stress can increase inflammation. And for any of us out there living with multiple sclerosis, we know that inflammation is like a bad word. Evil, good point. And so I just thought it was really interesting because I often see inflammation, that's your body's response to, it's like protective response. Your let's say, excuse me, it is just your response to bad triggers, bad things in your body. You have like an inflammatory response. And that inflammation it has been linked, or it has been thought to be kind of at the core of the sclerosis, the inflammation, the sclerotic plaques that interrupt the signals our brain is trying to send different parts of our body, thus multiple sclerosis.
And when I guess then let's dig into this a little further. Then for myself and people in Listerland, I have my my sense of social rejection and everything is just like, if I would have asked you out on a date and you would have said no, does that qualify as social rejection? Or is it like, you think about those of us living with MS, and you talk about like when our friends don't invite us to things anymore, so with that, does that not make it that much more difficult for those of us with MS, because that chance for social rejection is so much higher simply because of the unfortunate and unwarranted stigma that goes with this disease.
Yes, I think that's very fair to say that any sort of stress, let your work, your children, your finances, heck, it's stressful. For somebody like myself living with a progressive form of the disease, I'm not able to do what I used to, like eating dinner with you. Perfect example.
Like tonight.
Yeah, we just finished dinner about 20 minutes ago. And I get stressed out because I'm no longer able to use my right hand as well as I would like. And I get prideful, if that's a word that you'll permit me to use.
Doors open, it's all you.
I get proud and I'm like, I do not want to be fed. That's embarrassing, and granted, it's just Dan and me eating dinner together. But it stresses me out. I'm like, I hate to be fed like I'm a baby. And that's one thing that I feel that multiple sclerosis is doing its damnedest, darndest, forgive me for swearing.
Right.
It's trying to revert me back to a child because I need help to use the restroom. I need help to eat. I need help to fix my hair. And so I feel that periodically throughout the day, I have those stressors, those moments where I have a huge response. And I think that potentially that's unhealthy and something we could do a whole nother show about, ways to deal with that stress. And food, contrary to what sometimes I think, food is comfort, but food is not a solution. That is that never-ending, what would you say, that rabbit hole where you get stressed out because you can't help yourself, you can't do things for yourself, so you want comfort, so you eat. But then you need to watch your diet because diet can increase inflammation in your body. So it's like a slippery slope.
Well, and it's a question of what do you find yourself dealing with, or finding what's going to cause the least amount of stress, because using, if we may do so from here on out, using the eating, the dinner, you have stress because I'm helping you eat. Okay.
Right.
Stress with that. Okay, but
Right.
then look at the other situation. So if you didn't have to worry about Dan, if I may talk to myself in third person, but
yes, please.
Okay, but no, if you didn't get stressed because I was stepping in to help you, would you be more stressed if you were trying to eat by yourself and not able to pick up your fork and spilling food? I mean, and this is where I forget who we were talking to, or maybe it was when we did a live chat the other day. Somebody who was just diagnosed in June, I believe, and she said how she was totally new to this and everything was, new to her. And I'm like, I'm just saying, on some levels, even though you're newly diagnosed, you likely are just as much a seasoned veteran as we are that have been living with the disease for 20 plus years, because there are still so many unknowns and so many things that you have to continually teach yourself and learn from. And so with that long-winded description, it's like, at this point then, and you don't know which causes more stress, if you were eating with my help and having that stress, or stress that you aren't able to pick up the fork and lift it to your mouth.
That's a really good question.
Well, thank you.
And I'm not sure what would be more stressful. I think logically, if I'm not being irrational, which, let's be honest, every once in a while I can be.
I think we all get that way.
If I'm not being irrational, I would say, this is my husband. He loves me more than anybody on earth at this point in time in my life. And he would do anything for me. Stop being dumb, Jennifer. Just let Dan help you. But that would be rational, and I'm not rational. So I think it is stressful to have help, but then it's equally stressful to not be able to do it yourself. But if you're not concerned about how you look, well, then I'd just be shoveling food in my mouth and I would make a mess. So I think it's stressful either way you slice it.
With that, then, I mean, as we talked, this stressful situations here in La Casa de Digman, just
Yes.
you and me, does that all elevate, shift, change when we go out to eat dinner or in a public place? Or is that where you just, I don't, and I say this in a, a nice way, but I mean, you clam up and you just don't eat.
Well, it's that. I mean, realistically, people out there listening, you may understand. I'm uncomfortable eating in public. So if friends ask me out to dinner, I may say, not tonight. It may be easier for me just to sit at home and just eat and not get out in that stressful situation. Just totally avoid the situation.
But then, I mean, and now we're just, talking of rabbit holes. Does that then, you say no thanks, does that lead to social rejection because there's this sense of like, oh, the MS is keeping me from going out with my friend or friends? Does that elevate stress then as you sit home?
Because to a certain extent, I'm letting multiple sclerosis win. Because it's isolating me more. I'm getting socially isolated from friends that still want to hang out with me and include me, and I'm saying no. I don't feel comfortable being a messy eater. And I love my friend Amy, and we were hanging out maybe a month ago, and for the first time ever, I let her help me with a bite of food. And she said, boy, we've been friends for a long time and this is really hard for you. Can I help you? And she helped me. And it was not a big deal. But in that moment, it's so awkward. And that can lead to social isolation where you're like, rather than have to deal with that factor or that worsening of my MS, I won't go out anymore. But as I'm thinking and I'm being selfish talking, what stress is that for you? When you as my caregiver, boy, every meal with Jennifer, I know there's going to come a point in time where she can't help herself. I'm going to want to help her and she's going to get ticked. Is that a stressor for you? I mean, as a caregiver, be honest, babe, I can take it.
It is a stressor. I mean, and thereby then, yeah, I've got the MS, and so yeah, that hits me to where the stress comes with because I know it stresses you if I do this, whereas. But this is we have this give and take relationship, and I think this is where, the title of our show and what the work we do as far as a couple takes on MS. I mean, we both have multiple sclerosis, but we both serve as each other's caregiver, and so I think that's where the question of caregiving comes into play, where I have to be understanding of you, but you have to be understanding of me, and it's like. It takes less work and it's more stressful. I spoke too much till I get away from my point. Excuse me. But by the same token, it stresses me out to watch you. And so then it's just like, but I have to appreciate that and take a step back and let you do that. Where it's like, I know exactly if you would just stop and let me do it, you would eat, you wouldn't spill, I'd be happier. But I would be less stressed as your caregiver, but that in return stresses you out more. And so it's that give and take relationship as caregivers, as caregivees, and everything that, and I think that's why it works with us in our relationship, that I know it's best to just step back and let you do your thing, struggle, challenge, succeed, victory,
Yes.
or agony of defeat, to where you ask me, because you also know that you can't let it get too far gone, that it's going to be so much more work for me to
Clean up
clean
the
up
mess
and
I've
just
made, and
yeah, and so
have to wipe away my tears because I'm frustrated.
and then frustrating for me, because it's like, if only you would have asked me 2 minutes ago, we could have avoided this. And I think that's where there's that give and take relationship within caregiving for each other. That it is, you have to be cognizant of the other person's needs, while at the same time paying attention to yours and just knowing your limitations, but at the same time pushing yourself. And that's, again, and this is why we, as people living with chronic illnesses, we understand, or we've come a long way. Certainly I'm better off now and more knowledgeable about my limitations and my disease now than I was 20 years ago. But we always are learning. It's always a lesson.
Yes, and I think that's really important to understand and to appreciate. And I think what's super interesting is Dan and I have a really good caregiving relationship, and there's a lot of love and understanding. And how this conversation started was about the stress and the inflammation caused by social rejection. And you and I have a great understanding and a great relationship. But that social rejection, that's a huge piece, a huge stressor in people's lives. And we're lucky, but any sort of situation where you feel socially rejected, that is a stressor. And I think that it's important to pay attention to that immune response of inflammation. Do what you have to do to mentally stay in front of that social rejection and replaying it over and over in your mind. That can't be good for yourself. And that's why multiple sclerosis is such a head game.
Oh, totally.
For as much as you need to follow a proper diet, Google immune inflammation diet or lower inflammation diet. That's a piece, and exercise to help you deal with the stress that causes inflammation. But then just reading this article today about how social isolation can increase rejection, social isolation or social rejection can increase inflammation, just how important it is to keep your mind in the game.
And so with that, I mean, you talk one way to reduce inflammation is we turn to diet, we turn to exercise and everything. With this article and what we're talking about, it's really then to control the inflammation by either avoiding situations where you would have those instances with social rejection, or just mentally preparing so that you're ready to deal with the consequences that come your way.
Yes, and I think a big part, if I'm understanding this social rejection, something that I took away from it again is just not to turn to food, not to comfort yourself that way. And that social rejection, that's what we all deal with, and we all have. It happens in everyone's life. It's one piece that pretty much every human deals with. And we have to be honest and be a little bit kinder and more supportive as a society But then it's just really important to mentally stay strong and to not replay those episodes of social rejection over and over again.
So I mean, we talk about you with your food, or
Yes.
as we're helping you eat dinner. So then, for an example, for me, and I'm just asking, when I was applying for jobs, would that?
That's a
I mean,
really
so
good.
when I was let go from my previous job, obviously there was lots of stress that came with that, but also levels of relief. I almost feel like getting let go from that job was, I've never made this comparison before, but a lot of it's like getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Certainly not the option you really want.
Yes.
However, there was some levels of relief because I knew I had a clean slate, and it was like time to start over, and where do we go, and where do we build, and where do we move. So, but it's like then when I'm applying for jobs, get interviewed for jobs, and I don't get said job. Obviously, there's that's the ultimate of social rejection. But like you say, rather than replay it in your head, I mean, obviously, yeah, I was bummed when there were a couple jobs that I really thought I was qualified for and could have gotten. But I think it's just like, for me mentally, it never really did. I was frustrated, or you just think, I just want to be done with this. But I mean, it wasn't the rejection, because I think really it just charged me more. And I'm just always the eternal optimist, saying that something better is going to come along. And boom, something unimaginable came along to where I'm able to work remotely from my house 40 hours a week.
And it is so much better for you and I as a couple. But that eternal optimism that you talked about, I think all of us out here need to take a page from Dan and just be that eternal optimist and try and focus on the positive. Yes, Dan, perhaps you interviewed for a job and you didn't get it. So that was social rejection, but instead of dwelling or wallowing, if I can say, in that rejection, you were like, okay, there will be something better around the corner. And that takes a lot of persistence and a lot of strength of character to not wallow and dwell on that. But I think that's important because with social rejection, that lights up parts of your brain that are trauma and that are immune, inflammatory responding. And so it's important to just, if you can, look forward, be optimistic.
And I think that's where this ties into then what I always say is like just believe in yourself, and it's just like how just believe in your awesomeness. And I think that's where the downside with multiple sclerosis and the inability, there's things I can no longer do, but it's like that was my charge. I got determined, and that's where I talk about treating MS as a competition and everything. And it's just like, okay, well, you said I was there, I interviewed, I was the best candidate for you, employer A. You said no, and it's just like, I'm going to be the one you wish you had back. And and it's just like all that did was lit a fire under me to say, yeah, I am awesome and I'm going to move forward. But how do we then, as people living with multiple sclerosis, I mean, obviously that's employment, but I mean, there's just everyday situations that you just can't walk away and say, I'm going to be.
Well, just like going back to me eating. Today, you are the one that told me about was it like a Chinese proverb or something? Like, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Like today, that fork at dinner, it mocked me. And I needed to use Dan's help, and thank heavens he was here for me. But maybe tomorrow I'll eat something that'll be easier to eat. I'll be a little stronger. I won't be as tired. I'm going to try and persevere and manage eating and feed myself dinner.
Well, and
And
that's
I think that persistence, that is something that's really important for people with multiple sclerosis, is you can't let it knock you down. Or if it does knock you down, don't you dare stay down.
Yeah.
Try and get up. And I can say that because if you knock me down, trust me, I'm going to stay down physically, but emotionally, I'm going to get up. And that's what I think is really important with MS, is it's a mind game, and you mentally have to stay above it, and you have to not let it beat you down.
and don't beat yourself down. I think it's just like you don't stay there. I mean, and you just evaluate things. I think for you, just stop and think. Okay, well, you did a ton today. You were in your standing frame. You
Good
went
point.
shopping.
Yes.
You went to the salon. You got the oil changed. I mean, you did a lot today. And I mean, we were eating failed burritos. I mean, I tried to make burrito
They were
stuff.
delicious,
They were
Dan,
delicious,
don't knock yourself.
but you tried to make burritos, and the beans and everything it was too liquidy to make into a burrito. So I mean, we were dipping fractions of chips. I mean, we basically had chips and dip for dinner, and like deconstructed burritos. But it's just like, this was not, had they been chicken tenders or pizza or something like that, that was easier to pick up, you would have nailed it and stuff. So I think as far as your social rejection and inflammation, it's just always then to think about yourself, evaluate where you are, where you've been, where you're going, and don't let it beat you down.
And as far as inflammation, I think it's important. We could talk more about this, and maybe we will in the future talk about the importance of diet and exercise and just taking care of yourself so that we can do the best to manage our health. But if you are curious and you want to read the article that I was referencing, it's on healthline.com, and again, it's entitled How Social Rejection Causes Stress and Inflammation. And I think it's a really good article just to think about things from a different perspective.
So let us know what you think. How do you deal with inflammation and rejection, social rejection, and moving forward with your disease? So thank you all for taking the time to check in with us. It's a couple takes on MS. Find us on the website, danandjenniferdigman.com, or on Twitter @DanJenDig. Thanks to MS&Me Radio Network for having us, and thank you to Blue Draft Kid for composing the theme song to our show. Take care.